talofa lava, hola, bienvenidos. Welcome to Autism in Aotearoa. This is the third of our series today, brought to you by Victoria University. And we've got a lovely panel today, all with really interesting, fascinating stories. We've also got Matt on a video. He has pre-recorded answers, so we'll be discussing those as well. Kia ora koutou, ko Michelle Stevens toku ingoa. I am a speech language therapist. I work at Autism New Zealand and for the Autism Clinic with Victoria University. My special interest is autism, and I feel very privileged to work with so many amazing people.
Hey, I'm RJ. I'm transgender, he, him pronouns, and I'm probably here because I got diagnosed about 4 weeks ago with autism. So I went through my entire education without a diagnosis. And so you get to hear all about that.
Kia ora, I'm Philippa. I work with autistic children and their whānau, but today I'm here representing my own neurodivergent family, in particular my 2 autistic children.
Hi, I'm Ray. I use any pronouns. I'm an autistic and multiply disabled and neurodivergent person. I worked for the Ministry of Education for 2 years as a lived experience advisor, and I'm really passionate about the well-being and learning of disabled young people.
Hello, my name is Matthew. I am autistic and I am a Special Olympian. I won a medal, silver and a bronze in the 2023 Special Olympian World Games in Berlin.
Tell me about your or your child's experience in the education system.
Right, let's see what Matt has to say.
I started kindy at Bearenport at 3.5. My brothers had all gone to Island Bay, but Mum was worried it was too big and not safe enough. I was a runner, so Bearenport kindy was great for me. I had a special teacher aide called Marion, just for me. When I was 5, I went to St. Francis de Sales School. That was 2001. Over the years, I had lots of teachers and teacher aides. I stayed at St. Francis de Sales School until I was 12. That was 2008. Then 2009, I went to Horsell Residential College for 2 years. It was a boarding school. It was hard at first, and that I got used to it. After Horswell, I went to Wellington High from 2010 until 2016. I also went to Wellington for 2 years.
So I'll talk about me. I don't have a child. I'm autistic. So I went through my entire education system without knowing I was autistic. I realized that I might be back in first year of university, and for the next 4 years I attempted to get a diagnosis, and literally on my last day I got my diagnosis appointment. Thank you. And they said, yep, you are. I'm like, cool. That would have been nice 4 years ago or 10 years ago, but this is awesome as well. So yeah, I didn't have any accommodations and I was just sort of drifting in the ocean for most of uni, thinking probably maybe, but I don't feel confident enough to actually look for help or use the right terminology because I don't have that official, yeah, totally. So you know that thing where kids will be really gifted in primary school and then go into high school and like feel not talented anymore because they're no longer the gifted kids? I actually had the opposite. I sucked in primary school. I couldn't do anything. My basic addition, multiplication, spelling, it's all terrible. Like my little siblings, they're all under 10. They literally have a better understanding at the moment of those basic principles than I do now. And so I was always taken out into those, I don't know if every school did this, but ours was literally like, you get taken out of the main class and put into the little hallway, and that's just like one teacher, one-on-one with like 3 students saying, okay, this is how you spell dog. But in high school, it was like the switch flicked. I'm really good at writing. I'm a really good writer. I can type like nothing else. I was getting really good grades, not without a fair share of tears and stress, but I could do it finally. And I just sort of made my entire education around that. So that was high school for me. I passed that, and when I I've always liked art, I've liked animals. I decided to look at design, which is drawings and looking at products and taking products apart and learning how to improve products. So those are like, hits all the hyperfixations really well. So yeah, my university degree is actually weird because I am the first student of it. They've created a new thing at my university, which is basically a combination of 2 courses. So I decided to combine industrial design, which is the making of products, making of things, vehicles, boats to water bottles, and concept design, which is the initial stages of game design, animation, movies and such. It's really cool, right?
That's really cool.
It's really cool. I got to do my funky little drawings, and I got to go to my other class and make chairs. So I got to combine the 2 of those, and that was a really interesting course because I didn't have a class for a lot of it. It was very much you are the first student ever doing this, and you are the only student doing this in your year. So you are the front runner. You have to make all the decisions. You have no one to guide you besides a one-on-one hour lecture that you have with the guy running it. So I was doing all that sort of myself, and I could follow completely my own schedule, and that worked really well for me. So I'd basically jump into a class if I wanted to, but most of the time I was at home making things, and I did, not to sound overconfident, I did really well. Awesome. Yeah. So that's sort of how my education went. It was very much better because I had at least something I could do in it, and I did all my classes around that, and then really good because I was doing something I was interested and passionate in. And while everybody else was dying at the end of the year trying to slog through it, I'd come in all smiled and happy, be like, guys, I made another toy. They'd be like, good job, Ajay, we're gonna go sleep.
But isn't that just such a beautiful example of how the system around you can influence how you feel about yourself as a learner, and when you've given space to be creative and follow what you're interested in, you're so successful.
Exactly. Because nobody would have predicted when I was a kid that I would go on to be able to excel in a class.
Yeah.
I did.
That's awesome.
I was really inspired, RJ, when I found out about how you took what you were really passionate about and you made it into, essentially, you went and said, this is what I want to do, and you made it happen. And I think that would be, I know for me, it would be really intimidating, and just kind of making something out of it from scrap. But it sounds like it really motivated you, and you were really good at organizing those kind of things. So were you intimidated at all, or did you find I guess the world is my oyster?
I think I was intimidated, but also not as much as you would think. Like I say, I was doing really well, but I was also absolutely exhausted and sort of falling apart mentally a lot of the time. So I'd walk in and I'd be like, ugh, dying, and both the classes ran at the same time. My 2 majors ran at the same time, so I'd either have to do an hour in that, an hour in that, an hour in that, or just miss out. So I was running back and forth between buildings, and they'd be, Jay, what are you doing to yourself? And I'd be like, I'm having fun, just not in classes. And yeah, as the years went on, and as especially this year happened, I started trying to do that, run back and forth between buildings, absolutely burnt myself out, couldn't do it. And so for the last semester, I went up to my lecturers and said, I cannot be in class anymore. I literally am having a mental breakdown within 2 hours of being out of the house. I can't show up, I can't do any of this, but I will do the work. You know I will do the work. So I basically did not go to university at all for the past 6 months because I was just at home doing the things, and I'd only go in if I needed to use the workshop or particular resources. And I could do it perfectly self-motivated, but I couldn't work within a structure anymore. I couldn't work within an education system.
And so not only were you a university student, but you're also your own advocate. So you were doing a lot of things at once, but I think it's a really good example of how being able to know what you can do and what your strengths are and presenting those and say, I can do this.
Yeah, and I think it also did help that because I was the only student in this and I could essentially do whatever I want as long as I had that consultancy and let my lecturers and everything know, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm doing, I'm fine. I could sort of mold the education structure that I was in to my needs. And that was really, really useful. I wouldn't have been able to do it without being able to do that. Yeah.
It's a great story. That's awesome. And congratulations on your graduation.
So I'm here as a parent speaking about my experiences parenting young autistic children, and just acknowledging that we're really early on in our journey. So my autistic children are 6 and 2, and I'm listening very carefully, as I always do, to autistic adults who have been through the education system, because I'm taking learnings from their experiences and hoping to carve out something really positive for my kids. We have had a real mixed bag of experiences. We've had a couple of settings that have been really beautiful and worked really well, where I felt my kids were being appreciated for who they are, really well understood, really well supported, and it was still challenging. You know, there's still bumps along the road, especially when you're talking about a big system with a lot of kids in an environment that isn't necessarily set up for autistic kids. But we have had a few years that have gone really well, and on the flip side, we've had a year that went really terribly. And so I guess as a parent, I've also had the experience of seeing the effect that poor placement in an education system has on my children's mental health and their well-being and their physical health. And so we've had a year rebuilding and homeschooling to kind of build back up from that. So mixed bag so far, but I'm hopeful with our next placement we'll have another good experience.
How are you feeling like homeschooling is working for you? Because I've always looked at like, yeah, that could have been useful, but I've also looked at my parents and how we had interacted over homework, which is a whole thing in its own, and that was just always a nightmare. So it seems good, and like how I was saying, my education for the last part of uni, I could structure it to my needs, and that seems like a good thing for homeschooling, but I'm not sure how that's working in practice for you.
Yeah, I think you have to consider the whole family, hey, and we've got a little bit of privilege in our house that meant that we could homeschool. A lot of people just don't have that option. I don't feel like we were a family of born homeschoolers. It's not my passion, and it's not my plan to keep them separate from the education system, but I feel that my eldest really needed that time away from school just to rebuild his confidence and his physical health, because anxiety takes a huge toll on a little body. And I guess we were winging the homeschooling a little bit and doing it in our own space and time, to borrow some terminology. I'm expecting our educational journey to be a little bit creative. We might not follow a clear linear path, so I can imagine we might have times where we dip in and out of homeschooling as we need to.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
That's our experience with it.
How old are your kids now?
My eldest is 6. My middle child is 4. They are not autistic. They're in a little autistic sandwich. And my youngest is 2. Yeah. And
Small.
I guess it's just, they're tiny. They're right at the beginning. But in saying that, education and experiences in community are profoundly important when they're young, and they teach you a lot about how you understand yourself and how you can have relationships with other people. So they're really critical years, and to me it's really important that they're going well, and just the huge toll that you can see when they don't go well.
Yeah, it's very important. A child is a person.
I definitely in my work get to work with several teenagers, female teenagers. I love working with teenagers. And I see them, they did that road alone. You know, they didn't have the parent that maybe was able to say, hey, what's going on here? You know, and get in there. Whereas they might have had the felt it, but may not have had the confidence to do that. And I think your background has hopefully supported you in that, in feeling that way. And when a lot of times it gets that intermediate time or that college time, and suddenly everything, to a parent's perspective of suddenly they can't go to school, you know, they aren't able to do the things that they were used to do, their interests change. And it's really traumatic for the parent, for the child as well, obviously, but sometimes it's this disconnect, like as a parent, sometimes it's like, what have I done wrong? How have I not supported? How have I not facilitated? And I know how that feels as a parent, whereas the child's just like, it has nothing to do with you. And what I try to do is support them to come onto the same page and look at the different aspects to see what is it that's really difficult for you, so that then we can make some steps towards, and there's no rush either, but towards you being able to access what you want to access in the way that you want to access it. So it's like rebuilding. But I think it's amazing how you've started that at your child's very young age. And I think it's really brave too, because it's not always easy.
I think there's a lot of value in just knowing that your parents are there to support you and that they are willing to take a massive step into homeschooling just so you will be comfortable. I say just like it's a little thing. So you will be comfortable. And I think that's just a really amazing thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
Knowing that you're not going to be alone and you're not going to be cast out or told just try harder if you can't do a thing, if you're struggling.
Yeah, I think the stakes are pretty high though. I don't necessarily felt like we had a choice to continue school this year. You know, there was a lot of physical unwellness and high anxiety, and I didn't feel like school was safe at that point, which is really sad to say.
I think it's still brave to go on the journey that you had to go on.
I think I glossed over in my notes primary school entirely because I didn't remember most of it. I went to, I think, 8 different primary schools because we moved a bunch. I did all right. I was good at making friends quickly. I did really good at like English subjects. Not so well at maths because I couldn't memorize all of the things you had to memorize very well. So whenever they were doing like the basic facts sheets, everyone else would look at it and just remember the answer, but I would be actually working out each individual question in my head. So I did it like 5 times as slow as everyone else. They sort of sometimes didn't really know what to do with me. Like if I could spell all the words in the group, they were like, I guess you can go into that other classroom and draw Celtic knots instead of doing English lessons. And I was like, okay.
Or I could do something else.
I don't know, it feels like a good trade-off.
Yeah, or I'd be
Equally as
like,
educational.
or I'd be like 8 years old and they were like, man, you can read this book so quickly. Maybe instead you could do like a self-directed essay about mountain gorillas. But I was 8, so I didn't know how to do a self-directed essay about mountain gorillas. So I just drew a picture of mountain gorillas for 3 months. It was a really good picture. But yeah, anyway. There were a few situations where teachers just sort of like didn't really know how to meet me in the middle and gave me a weird task to pass the time while they taught the rest of the students. Primary school was okay. I did okay at it. I found that didn't have to work very hard to figure out how to do the assignments I was given, which wasn't something that stuck. In high school, I was pretty much instantly having like major shutdown episodes every single day in every single class. And it got to where they were like, here is this card that you can show the teacher so you can leave the classroom whenever you want and sit in the hallway and make yourself normal again. And then it got to the point where all the teachers knew that I had that, so I didn't have to show them. And then I just stopped going to class, and then my attendance in year 11 was like 11%. And in year 13, I got like, not expelled, but sort of expelled for lack of attendance because I just didn't show up for 3 months. I like stopped going or left high school about 5 times. 2 of those times I went to Central Regional Health School in the city, and I was there, which is like a school that teaches you how to go back to school, doing the kind of visits and things that you guys do, but more like structured. And it was all right the first time and then worse the second time. The second time I didn't like it, so I left in the middle of the day and got a train back to my high school and was like, hey, can I come back? And they were like, no. And I was like, please. And they were like, okay. And
The power of please.
yeah, and then I dropped out again. After that, I went to Welltech, and I was there for 3 months. My teacher at Welltech, I was studying hair. And her strategy was she would go into the room and she would get up in front of the whiteboard and she would write like pin curls on the whiteboard, and then she'd turn to you and go, look it up on YouTube, and then leave the classroom. So I dropped out of that. And I felt very sort of aimless and freaked. And then very quickly after that, got a job at the Ministry of Education and felt much less aimless and freaked. And now that's been kind of the work I've been doing for the past 3 years, has been similar stuff. Because once you are in it, people are like, oh, do you want to do this for us? Do you want to do this for us? Do you want to do this for us? Do you want to come be on this discussion panel that they're filming for Autism New Zealand? Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, that was what education was like for me. I found that in high school, people wanted to help, but they just did not have the resources or the bandwidth or the understanding of what they could do or like any ideas of how to help. They would be like, I don't know, you're having a hard time with exams. Do you want to do it alone in a room? And I'd be like, no. And they were like, damn, okay, well, good luck then. Or I would be like, I'm having a hard time with the stuff in this classroom. And they were like, do you want to do a self-directed research project for a whole year? And I was like, absolutely not. And they were like, damn, okay, good luck then. Yeah, but I'm not like, this is because learning support is terrible and we're screwing me over on purpose. They just can't help.
Yeah.
Under-resourced.
Sound like it was either
Yeah.
option A or option B, and if that doesn't apply
Yeah.
to your brain, then
Well,
too
they
bad.
don't have enough staff,
Yeah.
and they don't have enough like things that they are allowed to do, and they don't have enough bandwidth of able to see you a lot or come up with ideas a lot. There's just not much that they can help with. But when it works for people, that's great. And when it doesn't, that's less great, but you know. Oh, there was a really great speech language therapist at my high school. I know, SLPs for the win. And she was awesome, and she did a lot of like, I guess like the stuff that I wish learning support could do for me. She was like the main thing that she wanted to do was just help me to communicate my needs to my teachers, and I really appreciated that because I didn't talk for about maybe 2.5 years in high school. So that was how I got to meet her, and she was really helpful and wonderful, and I'm really grateful for the support that she gave me. Yeah.
I have to say that although I come from an ADHD perspective, there are so many similarities. I mean, I know that my child struggled immensely in college years, and one of the main things was that they were so strict around what they wore
Yeah.
that they finally said, you cannot wear a jersey. They weren't supposed to wear a hooded jersey. And so my child decided to carry it with them. And that was seen as complete
Yeah.
disobedience and just very openly quite rude.
Yeah.
And then when he said, give me your jersey, they would say no. And that was even worse. And so it was this constant because they needed it with them, but they weren't able, because they have such high anxiety, they weren't able to say, I need it because, and we talked about it at home and things like that. But in the moment, they weren't able to do that. And it's resonating so much, these stories. And I think it's although this is related to autism, I think that neurodivergence can see the similarities.
Yeah, I mean, there's also definitely like a power trip that certain teachers go on who are like there because they are bigger than kids. And it is difficult in that environment for kids to learn, which is very important for them to learn, that they are also people who are able, allowed, and welcome to communicate and advocate for their needs. I wish that teachers and staff in education were more willing to put communication as like their primary intention in interactions with young people. I think that coming from a place of like curiosity and wanting to understand where that young person is at and what they are needing and what they're trying to tell you could do a lot of good for the well-being of the whole classroom.
That's a really nice way of saying it.
Yeah, I agree, because the best classes and the times I've done the best in school has been when I've had a rapport with the teacher, like the one that I've done my university with for the past 3 years. We've reached a point where we just sass each other, and it's really great. It's like I show up to my weekly meetings, and it's basically just an excuse to banter with each other back and forth. And that was in high school as well. It was with my English teacher and my geography teacher especially. I remember one time I was handing in a geography paper, and I think it was meant to be like a 5-page essay max. It was 15 pages, and that was me severely cutting it down. And he went, RJ, I have to read this. And I said, I had to write it. And he said, okay, that's fair. And yeah, those were always the classes I did best in, because they were just the sass the teacher, I guess, and they always worked well. But on the opposite end, when you can't do that, it doesn't end well. Yeah, because there's some teachers that just power trip, like you said. And that's not doing anyone any favors.
I think that's probably where we are as a family at the moment, is what we're hoping for our little people in the education system is to have good relationships with their teachers, and good mutual relationships where they can appreciate different communication styles. And I think if my child goes into a system and they feel liked and supported, I actually don't really care what they learn, because they're already learning that they can be in community and that they're a worthy, wonderful person, and that's really the only thing I worry about as a parent.
Not to be a terrible influence, but as soon as I finished high school, my immediate wish was that I didn't try so hard in high school, because I went into design school and I hadn't even finished high school at that point. I basically came and I showed them a demo of my portfolio, and I was like, yeah, do you have any advice on like how to improve it? They're like, you're in. Excuse me? You're in. Welcome to the school. So yeah, my immediate thought in high school was, well, that was a waste of time. I wish I didn't stress out about that so much.
That's a really good point. I think knowing your options is a huge thing.
And being able to make those choices that are positive at the time that you need them.
Yeah.
As someone who didn't stress about high school and went through all of it with the thought, in 10 years, when people look at my resume, they won't think about how I did an NCA literally at all. And so what is the point? I agree, it doesn't matter. I didn't do any of it. I do not have any NCA levels, but I do have a career that I love, and a volunteer job that I love, and friends and family that I love, and a life that I love, and that's much more important.
And that's really interesting, because I'm the same but opposite. I have excellent endorsements in all my NCAs, and it doesn't matter. I have a life I love, I have friends I love, family, we're getting there, but I really enjoy being a person that I am now, and I agree. High school didn't matter.
No one's life is over at 18.
No, exactly.
That's such wise words.
For a parent, because it's scary.
Yeah.
It's really scary when your child is afraid to go to school, and I think you think they're missing out on those things, you know, those high school things, college things, to Americans still, and it is, and I think hearing that as a parent is incredibly valuable and very insightful. It's like, oh yeah, this isn't the end game, you know? This is just a step.
I feel like it's so easy to feel that, and just high school was a nightmare for my mental health, because kind of not on the topic of autism here, but every project was focused around how fucked up the world is and how everything is going wrong. And there was never any solutions in those classes. It was always, everything is bad, good luck. I think one class we had, I think this is actually the class that got me into industrial design. It was, yeah, this guy out of college, he made this special trash collector that skims the top of the ocean and picks it all up, and it's a really cool recycling way. I'm like, wow, amazing, finally we have a positive interaction. We have someone who is doing something. And my teacher went up and said, yeah, so this isn't really working. It doesn't clean up all the microplastics. It doesn't matter. It's not trying to clean up the microplastics. It's trying to clean up all the other trash.
Someone else can invent something to clean the microplastic.
That is what I said.
We're not going to fix everything by finding one person who is smart enough to solve all of it with a single idea. The reason that people are alive as a species is because of our communities and because of the connections that we have to each other. It is our greatest strength. When newborn horses are born, the first thing that they can do is run, because what keeps them alive is that they can run. And when babies are born, the first thing that they do is cry, because what keeps us alive is that we communicate with each other about our needs. When I feel at work like the things I am doing can't fix everything, I look around at the people I am working with and I remember that I do not have to, because if I cannot do something, there are other people who will fill in the gaps, and that is what it means to have a community. Or something.
That is a really, I love that metaphor, I guess, or comparison of horses to babies. That's really cool. That's a weird sentence to say without context.
But I think that is what, in the ideal world, classrooms could offer my kids, this feeling that they don't have to be everything and do everything, but they can be a valid part of the community. Yeah.
A very valid part, in
Yeah.
fact.
Yeah.
Can you describe a positive experience with teachers or school staff?
I had lots of favourite teachers. At Beamport Kindy, it was Marion. She was good in catching me. At St Francis de Sales, they were two special teachers. They were Mandy and Ida, who was my teacher aide for most of my time at St Francis. When I went to Horsell, everyone was so kind and nice, so they were all my favourites. In Wellington High, I enjoyed being taught by Hannah and Vicky. At Waltech, my teachers were Marie and Scott, and they were good fun.
Cool.
That's really
That's
positive.
lovely.
I
I'm
think
so
he
glad
said,
that there were so many.
I think in every place that he went.
And the
Lovely.
teacher aides being a real
Yeah.
key role for him as well. I have a couple of really positive experiences I'm bursting to talk about because they've had such a profound impact, I think, on my child, but actually more importantly on our whole family. And the first one was our first visit to Kindy. So I was taking along my 3.5-year-old and with my baby on my hip, and I was more tired than tired and so frightened. I've never been so frightened. I didn't know what to expect. I was very aware that my child was developing in an unpredictable, asynchronous way, and I didn't know how that would be received at Kindy. And I also knew that he had a lot of sensory things going on. He was likely to find Kindy loud, which he did, busy, which he did. The kids would be overwhelming, they were. So I was going along anyway. Somehow I'd mustered up all this courage and I was very prepared to be turned away. That was what was going on in my head. And as a little 3 in Kindy, initially it went worse than I even had nightmares about. Yes, my child was overwhelmed. They got a fright when someone ran around the corner and they pushed them over, which created a whole big thing. But the Kindy just showed how beautifully understanding and skilled they were. So I just saw these teachers emerge like this well-orchestrated SWAT team, and one went to help support the child who was unfortunately pushed, and one was supporting us, because all 3 of us at that point had started to cry. And I remember saying, like, I don't know if my child can participate at Kindy. And the head teacher, Nikki, and I think everybody deserves a Nikki, she said, oh, this is our bread and butter. We've got this. This is early childhood. This is predictable. This is expected. And then she went on and actually really got to know my boy really well. And then she was coming at me with a different narrative, which was, your boy is such an exciting learner. I saw him do this. And she just had such a clear belief that my boy deserved to be at Kindy and that our family deserved to be there, and that he could participate in his way, which is, by the way, supported in the Te Whāriki curriculum. Like, there is provision there that your child should be able to participate and play like they like to play, but that whole Kindy really wrapped around, and they created that for my boy. And they also gave him opportunities that we just couldn't as a family. So yes, he had his interests, and they had all the materials to build and expand on these, and they'd slowly draw in another child into the play too, so we could learn to kind of tolerate that. And it really built just this confidence and capacity in him, but more importantly, I guess, beliefs in our family that actually our kid could do this, they could participate, they could be part of it. And then all the learning stories coming through were all about his contributions to the kindy, like he's thinking of new, like you were saying, new ways to play, new things to bring in, and it was being so valued. And I think that actually set us up as a family to believe that actually our child, who is a really capable learner, can participate.
And a really capable member of his community.
Yeah. So that I will always remember that. I will always be appreciative to Nikki. And I think when you are that skilled teacher, you may not appreciate how critical your role is and how much of a fundamental change that you can have to a little person, but their whole family around them as well. So that's my favourite positive experience. We've had other positive experiences too, but that was just such a lightning bulb for my family.
That's so beautiful. I'm so happy for
Amazing.
you.
Yeah, and I when things don't go very well, and they don't often, that's one of the memories I really draw on to think, no, I have a child who's an exciting learner and who can participate. When he's got a team around him who believes in him and likes him and makes an effort to connect and understand him, then he's capable of anything.
Yeah.
But it does take the whole system to believe and get behind a little person, I think.
I mean, that's all any parent wants, isn't it? Is for other adults to like take their kid in good faith and think, this little person's really cool. What are they trying to say?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want.
There's blackbirds outside.
Let them stay outside.
Female blackbirds are brown and they have spots on their chests, which makes them look very similar to song thrushes. But song thrushes look different because the spots on their chests have like a gold ring around them, like cheetah spots. And that's how you can tell the difference, because they're much more contrasted.
Cool.
I only know how to identify like 3 birds. It's not like a wealth of knowledge.
I think that your example, I mean, when I think about the examples that I have or I thought of,
Yours captured the main essence of what those are, and that is just empathy, understanding, acknowledging,
Yeah.
and then community and acceptance.
Yeah.
But not even just acceptance, but that acknowledgement, like your contribution,
Yeah.
and then that also the effect that it has on the entire family. And I think it was just a perfect example, because for me, those are real 3 components to what my stories were as well. And it was great to hear.
Yeah, that was the game changer for us.
Yeah, so I was, to my memory, quite close with all of the teachers that I had in primary school. I was always like the kid who felt like they were besties with their teacher. And that was really wonderful for me and worked great for me. It was a bit trickier in high school because you just have suddenly a lot more teachers and you can't be besties with all of them. Law of large numbers, not in the cards, that's okay. But my textiles teacher, who I had for all of high school, was really, really wonderful and supported me so much. She was always really like excited about my ideas and cared about the things that I wanted to make, and helped rein me in when my ideas were actually way too complicated and unfeasible to pull off in the time frame that we had in our classroom. I appreciated that. She also like was always like on board with me going way off script of her assignments, and doing things I wasn't really supposed to do. As long as I made something cool and did it and it was gradable, she was like, I would love to grade whatever you would like to make. When I was away at health school for long periods, she would, in her class time, work on my projects that I was doing, so that whenever I was back in the classroom, I was always caught up with my peers. And I could still like be doing what everybody else was doing, and that meant so much to me. And at the end of high school, when I was like 17, and I had come back and I wasn't really going to almost any of my classes right before I dropped out for the last time, the one that I always went to was my textiles class. I loved it very much. I felt really supported by her. Yes.
Cool teacher.
Yeah, she was cool.
A lot of my good teachers came in university, and I will say Tanya's name because Tanya's amazing and she's awesome, but I'm going to tell you a bad story about Tanya instead. Tanya is my concept teacher. She does prop making, she makes toys. She is single-handedly responsible for getting me into that, so I have only good things except for this one thing to say about Tanya. So we were making props for one class, and I really wanted to have the spinning light thing. And Tanya kept saying to me over and over, I can't count how many times she said, "Why does it need to spin?" And apparently that meant, RJ, you should not make this spin. It is far too complicated and you're slowing yourself down. I just heard, why do you need to make it spin? Because spinning's cool, Tanya. And I did not understand it. That's what she was trying to say until the final week. And I went,
I would also interpret that as I've got to come up with a really cool written justification for why I want this thing to spin to put in my project brief.
exactly.
Yeah.
That is exactly how I took it. And it wasn't until the final week when we were like finishing everything up and turns out I couldn't make it spin. I went, oh! And I think that epiphany came during class, and everyone was like, because they'd all heard this feedback as well, they're like, yeah, RJ, no kidding. Why did nobody tell me?
Yeah. You didn't tell me my idea was bad. You asked me to justify it. I love to justify my ideas.
But I think she admired the tenacity to it. But I'll tell you a positive story about Tanya. When I was this last semester of uni, when I couldn't show up to anything, I had to tell my three main lecturers, hey, I can't come to class anymore. And all of them responded, especially Tanya was like, that is okay. You do you. We fully support you. We will work with you, and we trust that you can do this. And yeah, they put me first and foremost, and that was just, I didn't expect it. Like, even though I know, like, I'd been working with them for years, I know they're lovely people, I still didn't expect them to care about me. As sad as that seems to sound, but they were, yeah, that was just really lovely. And having that support of a teacher acknowledging, don't worry, this isn't a failure on your part, and we can still work with it. Yeah. And you can still work despite or around. You can, yeah. Just that faith in me was really, really nice and positive. Yeah. And I do want to make a point to anyone watching that it is really scary to say, hey, I need this, or hey, I can't do this. But a lot of the time, if you get up that bravery, people are really cool about it, and you don't understand how wonderful humanity is until that happens.
Yeah.
Yes, that they are the most valuable thing from my perspective, and that they're worth asking for, and that schools are incredibly busy, pressured places, and sometimes you might need to ask a few times if the first answer is when we're a bit busy at the moment. I think they're important if your child is struggling, and they're important if your child's not at the because sometimes people say, oh, they're doing pretty well at the moment, they may not be needed. I would strongly suggest they might still be helpful. The reason I think that is that you get a moment where one-on-one with your child's teacher and with the Senko or anybody else in the team supporting your child, and that you can go through and share your understanding and really partner in supporting that child. Yeah, and often you can solve 30 problems quickly with a lot of people around the table rather than 20,000 emails. Yeah. So I think they're really helpful. Yeah.
So I don't know what IEP is.
It's an individual education plan, and it's a plan that gets made between the staff of the school and their families about what is the best way to support that learner and what things they need to be able to learn as well as they can. And it is one that the school is beholden to. They have to follow it, and it is subject to change over time. Is there more?
That's
to that?
A beautiful summary.
Okay, well, I've never had one, so I think I did pretty decently at those.
I think in practice it often looks like people meeting around a table and talking through.
Like student-teacher interviews, but larger scale?
Better, because teacher interviews are short and sharp. Yeah. This would be like an hour and a half. Yeah. You might have the family, you can bring support people too, which is really important. My child is really teaching me to be a lot braver in how I communicate and advocate, because historically that has been a weakness of mine, and it's having to become a strength. But I sometimes feel a lot of pressure going to those meetings to have all the answers or be perfect. But then I think, no, actually my role is to be there as family. And I always say things like, I can be quite slow processing and I might come up with an answer that I'll email later, rather than the pressure to have to solve all of the challenges.
It's like what I said before about how you don't have to be the person to solve anything, because you are not alone and there are people to fill in the gaps.
It feels like that when you have an IEP that's supportive and you've got a lot of people around the table. The kindy that I was raving about in their IEP, I don't know how they got it to happen, but we had the family, we had the head teacher, we had every single other teacher who had showed up for my boy in their own time. I think we ask a lot of our teachers actually to do this sort of things in our own time. I'd like to see a world where teachers were supported with more release time to be able to attend these meetings, but that actually blew me away. Every single person showed up.
I have to say that too, Pip, and one that I went to, and it was at college. And the only thing that I remember from it is that there was about 9 teachers in the room, and I thought, I've never seen this, and it absolutely took me. I was in awe. I was like, I'm so glad my son is here. And the goals were great, and I looked at them afterward, but that was the thing that I was really impressed by, that they took that time.
Something that I really appreciated about the speech language therapist that they had at my high school was that she was the first person I think I met who really cared about like my goals and what was important to me. I found that in school previously, it seemed as though goals were something that other people make for you based on what they think you should be, and you just kind of sit there and wait for them to make them and then don't do them. One of the biggest ones that we had was, because I went to meet her and I went into a room with her and I closed the blinds and turned all the lights off, and she was like, "It's so cool to meet you," and I nodded, and she like handed me, I think like paper or her phone or something for me to start writing notes to her, and we started talking about all of my interests, and we got along so well, and it was wonderful. And it was like, I think the first person who didn't see me not speaking as like a hindrance to us getting along or getting to know each other. She was just like, this is a neutral fact about you. I am going to be your friend anyway. What she used to say a lot was, you are a young person, and that means that sometimes people won't listen to or respect you when you say your needs, but you know what your needs are. I don't know them. My job is that I am an adult, and I'm gonna stand behind you and look very tall and official. So when you communicate your needs to people, they think, oh, a grown-up, better listen to that. So all you have to do is help me to do that for you. And that was our main goal that we had together, was to figure out what the best way is to communicate my needs to my teachers. And that was something that was really important and meaningful to me, and I really appreciated that.
It's awesome, I'm borrowing that.
Yeah, it's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, because that sounds like something that was missing from my education, because I didn't have a diagnosis for all of it. So I was just struggling to do anything, do everything myself, and I never had that sort of, I had to advocate for myself if I was struggling. I never had somebody to be like, oh, you are struggling, here, let me help you with that. It was always either silently just keep pushing and keep pushing yourself harder, because if you don't, it's a failure on you. Or when university, when I finally got some confidence, I was, okay, I have to start admitting I can't do things. And it worked. It was a good positive experience, but it's a difficult thing to have to go through for yourself.
I think that each autistic person is different, and that people supporting them should find out their lives and dislikes so they can support them better.
Give them more money. Please, just pay them better. They'll care more.
I think more support to understand autism and neurodivergence in general, and more support to understand the individual autistic student in front of you. I think, fair enough, actually, it is quite difficult sometimes to understand a person who is developing in a different, exciting way to what would be considered standard. And I think that's challenging because sometimes you have a lot of they're asynchronous, so they've got a lot of really peak skills, and sometimes you look at those skills and you think, right, you should be able to do everything at this level, and then it suddenly becomes very frustrating for the teacher and the student when they're not. Or you look at their absolute base skills, and I guess that might have been what you're saying is happening to you at school. This is the lowest skill set we're seeing. We're assuming everything is at that level, and then suddenly school becomes very boring and unexciting, and you're missing all the gold as well. But that's quite a hard process to do, so I think more support for schools and understanding each individual child would be brilliant.
I want teachers to have the time and money and resources and bandwidth and support to be able to do that for all of their students. I think that embracing variations in the way that students learn is something that can only help everyone. I would really like for students to be uplifted and supported in their learning. I think that teachers are never going to be able to spot every neurodivergent kid in their classroom, and they shouldn't have to, and those kids shouldn't fall through the gaps when that happens. And also, like, kids who don't get to hide their neurodivergence like I could in primary school shouldn't be falling through those gaps either. Like, I don't know, for example, information doesn't need to be conveyed in really vague ways with a lot of words, and if it isn't, that's not going to hurt the kids who can understand things that are conveyed vaguely and with lots of words. It's just going to help everybody to be on the same page. When I did my work for the Royal Commission, something that I said a lot was that most people who are working, taking care of autistic people, are not waking up with the intention to cause harm, but harm is still happening. And it isn't because they're evil, it's because they are tired and they don't have it in them to be there for everyone. And I think the world could be a whole lot better if we made it so that they had it in them to be there for everyone. Yeah.
Do you want to add something, or I'll add something?
No, it's all you, RJ.
A specific piece of advice I would say is keep on top of and learn about symptoms of autism, signs of autism, as new research keeps coming in. Just keep on top of that, because I feel like the reason nobody caught it when I was little or teenager or at any point was because I didn't fit into those boxes of old research. And that's something even now that my parents look back and say, like, but you didn't show any of the signs. I did, they're just not the signs that you knew. And that comes from a family that has a history of nursing as well, so they had more, and that's, yes, they had more research and knowledge than most, but it still was wrong, wasn't enough.
I get that. I personally don't mind whether teachers can tell if their students are neurodivergent, as long as they can do their best to figure out how they learn and how they can support them in that for everybody. But I understand how it could also be helpful to know.
Yeah, I only say it because when I started looking for a diagnosis, everyone's reaction was, oh, your teachers never picked it up. So it was like the be-all end-all, like that is part of their job. Like I actually think that's what my mum said to me at one point. It is part of their job to know if you're autistic, to see those signs, right? That's what I said. Like I said, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like something they should be one able to do or should have to do.
Yeah.
That's too much
That's
pressure.
not fair. Okay, that's the last one.
Could I say one last thing that I would just love
Absolutely,
for
I would
teachers?
love for you to do that.
Well, for everybody, for our whole community, is I guess a broader mind and openness to different communication styles, and maybe letting go of some of the assumptions that neurotypical communication styles are the best, most respectful, appropriate way of communicating. I know there are some things that I think my son will never be able to do comfortably. I don't think he's ever going to want to choose to make eye contact comfortably as a way to communicate. I think if you tone police them the whole time, it's going to be unsuccessful.
It's also a distraction. You're not paying attention to what he's communicating to you if you're so busy thinking about all the ways that he's doing it wrong.
Thank you.
I would really love, yeah, you're right, for people to be like excited and curious about how to best communicate with every person that they meet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I would walk into a classroom, and if I see a poster that says, "This is how a respectful listener is," and it's like still bodies, eye contact, hands in lap, and I look and I think, oh, my child is never going to be able to show you respect in the way that you're wanting, but they will be the child in the back of the classroom listening to every word you say.
Yeah.
That would be what I would like, is maybe a bit more education around different communication styles and appreciation for them as well.
My last suggestion is just to get rid of all those posters.
Oh yeah,
yes.
bin the posters.
And get rid of punishments for not following those arbitrary rules.
Everyone's looking at me. I can start. I've got my notes again. Excuse my phone on the table, everyone. I think that the problem with autism inclusion in the classroom is that education is a lot like a coat that is too small. And accommodations are like they are trying to stretch it to fit around the students that it doesn't work for, but it doesn't sit right, and it pulls in all the wrong places, and people are always asking things like, how do we change this? What spot do we need to pull on to make sure that it fits around you? Like, what do you need to suck in? Where do you need to put your shoulders? What should we be tugging at? And what we really need is just a bigger coat. I don't want to be stretched around. I don't want to feel seams popping at my shoulders and to be sucking in when people pull up a zip. I don't want to feel fabric pressed tight at the cuffs. I want a bigger coat. I think that education would be better if we just had a bigger coat.
I think that should be written down somewhere.
Beautiful.
I think
Beautiful.
it is.
It is written in your phone. Okay, I think that should be shared more broadly. That's
Put a
beautiful.
poster up, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think that the question is really simple and complex at the same time.
Yeah,
Because I
for
actually
sure.
think a lot of the answer would be things that would improve the system for all students.
Yeah.
I think all students would benefit from smaller classrooms.
Yeah, absolutely.
And being able to self-regulate by moving in and out of environments that work for them. I think that's going to take a real shift in mindset about how we value education and the
Absolutely.
resources we put into it.
Yeah, I think lots of the improvements that can be made to education for autistic students, I can't really think of any that wouldn't have a real curb cut effect for every student in the classroom. I think that it is not just autistic and neurodivergent kids who would benefit from the education system being a bigger coat. I would like it to fit around everybody without any tugging.
I think if you flipped the script too, and you could have a lot of time thinking about all the amazing things that the autistic children bring to the classroom.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're wanting our kids to learn about creativity, thinking out of the box, passion for projects and what you believe in, and following your gut and your instinct, that we want to be looking to our autistic kids. If you want kids to get stronger at perspective taking and understanding different frames of reference, then you want autistic kids in your classroom. I would like my children to be in classroom with a lot of diversity to stretch and grow them, because I think that's what we're going to need our adults to be in the future as well.
I don't disagree with that sentiment, but I do think it's important to include the fact that an autistic child does not have to have a purpose. They do not. No, I know that's not what you're saying, but I'll say it for the purpose of video and saying it out loud, that you don't have to be useful. You don't have to justify your existence as an autistic person. You exist, and that's fine.
Yeah, I agree with
You
that
don't
too.
have to be useful.
Yeah.
I'd really like for those, like as you were saying, like those core learning skills to be prioritized over the little projects that try to communicate them, because some of them might not be the way that core learning skill gets across to that student. And I'd love to, if we could figure out how we can teach everyone those skills of critical thinking and following your interests and self-motivation and learning and research and connecting with other people and communicating your ideas. I'd love if that was on top. Yeah.
I think this comes from my speech therapy point of view, but I think that
Developing friendships and the importance of the role that the teacher plays in showing people how to communicate in different ways so that you can access the amazing skills and the amazing attributes and humor and intelligence and all these things that sometimes people aren't sure how to communicate with people to access those things because the communication's different. Yet when you get past that, I shouldn't say past it, but when you understand and have another pathway to go, it's a gold mine. And I just think that should be encouraged for all children so that they can experience the other parts of school, like the friendships, that they may just not know how. They need a bit of support to get there, and then everyone wins. So I think the friendships is something that is invaluable, and the stories that I hear that's what people remember.
Teachers can best help us by understanding the disability. Each of us has individual needs. We just need to be understood. For me, structure is very important, and most of us work in our own special. Once teachers gain our trust and we let them in, and understanding teachers is the best person.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Once you have that trust and that relationship, then everything goes better.
Yeah.
And that's what you've all said, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I've touched on it already, but having the ability to create your education to suit you is really the most valuable thing, and it's a really hard thing to set up as a system to say, oh, some of you have to follow these stringent rules and others you can make a path for yourself, and it's really looking at an entire upheaval, but there are middle grounds. I worked in university with everybody else following the same strict guidelines for a design major, but I was working with my own way, and that worked really well for me. So there's ways to work it in there, but I do think that it's important to look at the education system itself isn't quite working for this specific needs. And it's either looking at how can we fix that from the ground up, or how can we alter it as it is now to work. And I don't have the answers to that question. I don't work in the education system, but
That's okay. Bringing up the question is one of the main things. And then we have other people to do that, right?
Well, I used to work in the education system, and I can say none of us have the answers either, but that's why we fill in each other's gaps, and that's why we work together and see what we can change. Great. Oh, beautiful. Look at me go.
You should have done this.
What was your favorite subject in school?
History.
History. What do you like about history?
I really love memories, and I really love dates and birthdays.
Are you good at remembering dates?
Yeah.
Did you start athletics at school? How did you get into athletics?
At Newtown Park.
Newtown Park.
Yeah, and how did you get on Special Olympics?
How I get in Special
And
Olympics.
who was your coach?
Dean Patton.
And who else coaches you sometimes?
My brother Chris, and my coach Jeffrey, and my coach Kate Fox.
And where did you go? And you represented New Zealand and this year. And where did you go when you did Trans Tasman? When you went to Australia, where did you go?
Cairns.
And what did you win there?
Silver.
And
Gold.
Yeah. And running.
Gold and running.
Yeah.
How long have you been going to Olympics? How many times have you been?
I've been 2012.
Where did you go?
Cairns.
Yeah. What next?
Next is 2013, Dunedin, Special Olympics Athletics, and 2016 went to Hamilton with Special Olympics in 2017, Wellington National Summer Games 2017, and 2022 last year I went to Hamilton in 2022, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times.
So,
I went 5 times.
been over in about 10 years, right?
About 10
And he's
years.
always won a medal. Got
Always.
some sort of
Always.
medal, yeah.
It's been 10
Did that
years.
start at school?
No, we heard about Special Olympics ourselves. Because Matthew was going swimming and we met a few parents there that their kids with special needs and they told us about Special Olympics. So we joined Special Olympics. And
Yeah.
Matthew ended up doing Special Olympics running, athletics, one of
Basketball, and bowling, and swimming.
sort of swimming.
Sort
And
of
what else do
swimming.
you do? You're a hip hop.
Hip hop dancing.
Yeah, and you just did it at Special
Hip-hop
Olympics.
dancing.
A group of us parents set up a group of 10 kids that they do hip hop dancing. What day?
Mondays.
Mondays, yeah.
Is that where you learned about pink?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he's always loved music, haven't you, Matt?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we learned to talk through music.
Oh.
Yeah, we couldn't,
Yeah.
couldn't get a word out of him, but if we sang something to him,
Yeah.
like row, row, row your boat, he
Row
would
your
sing back to us. You know.
What's your favourite song from Pink?
Never gotta not dance again. Trustful. Cool.
Awesome. I think we are good. Anything else?
We are good.
Are you happy?
Yeah, I am happy
Yeah.
and confident.
And confident.